Once again, my name is Sean Rodgers. I am one of the co-founders of Springfield Cares Coalition. I also work as a treatment professional for a facility called Center for Families, where we treat adolescents in an outpatient setting. We have a therapeutic day school in Malvern. 3 years ago, I got a phone call from a commissioner in Springfield, Delaware County. He called me concerned that we had nothing in the way of resources in our community to help individuals that struggle with substance use disorder, and he knew that I was a person in recovery. I am a person in long-term recovery, and I'm very proud about my recovery, and I was given the opportunity to get involved with Springfield Cares Coalition, and that coalition was initially comprised of some stakeholders in the township, our law enforcement, and Chief Daly and Officer Andy Graff, and a few other individuals in our community. And I think when we started the first 6 meetings, there was not a lot accomplished. There was a lot of confusion in that room. There was a lot of education in that room. We really were trying be of use to our community, but we needed to understand our purpose first and foremost. And when Joel had called me about, I would say, 4 or 5, 6 weeks ago and asked me to present tonight in regards to how we're engaging our law enforcement in Springfield, Delaware County, and what that looks like so we can help more individuals get into treatment and not be incarcerated, I was elated, but this is a small piece of what we're doing with Springfield Cares Coalition. And what I mean by that is that our primary purpose in Springfield is to not only create a resource, because as Gina said, when I went through this with my family, I was the middle of 5 children in Springfield, Delaware County. We had no idea where to turn. We didn't really want to talk about my struggles with heroin. It was not a subject matter that they were going to talk to the neighbors and ask them questions about. So, you know, there wasn't really this process of understanding how to navigate this or where to go or what resources to utilize to get their son help. And it was very taboo to like open up to anybody about this. So when I was given the opportunity to get involved with Springfield Cares, it was important for me to create a point where we can navigate this process with a free hotline, and that's one of the many things that we do. The other thing that we have created is this initiative with Springfield School District, where 2 years ago I was given the opportunity to present to Springfield School Board and talk a little bit about you know, how we need to change the way that we're educating our youth on this subject matter of substance use disorder and mental health, and we need to let our youth know that it's okay to ask for help. And the superintendent, Tony Barber, had allowed me to not only give that presentation but work with an outside organization called Minding Your Mind to implement education for freshmen up to senior class in their health class every year, 8 hours of why it's okay to ask for help. So you know, we're happy to be here and talk about this subject matter, but this is a small part of what we've kind of developed through Springfield Cares Coalition, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Andy, do you want to give an introduction?
Sure. Andy Graff, Springfield Police. I've been a police officer for almost 15 years now. I've been with Springfield Police for about 11 years. Previously, I worked in Morton, which is a neighboring community.
It's really far away.
Springfield. So I was pretty familiar with Springfield when I came on. Before that, I worked in Westchester for about 6 months. But I'm a Delaware County guy. I grew up in Drexel Hill. I went to Haverford High School. Sean and I are about the same age. I know Sean personally. You know, we have mutual friends that have gone through, you know, the struggle of addiction, and we just kind of have a lot in common there. I'm also a member of the Delaware County Drug Task Force. For about the last 2 years, I've been involved with the district attorney and on that end. And I also do the community relations in Springfield Township, Community Watch.
And I have to say, Officer Andy has become a great resource to Springfield Cares because himself and Chief Daly do a great job of educating a lot of the other officers in the police department about some of the things that we're trying to get across from just an information and education standpoint of what substance use disorder looks like in our community. Am I going the opposite way? I am. All right, here we go. Let's get started. That's my ugly face. I already told you about that. My sobriety date is 12/27/2011. That's really important to me. it's important that we talk about our recovery. A guy that I once met in early recovery, this guy Dave Moran, who's sitting 2 rows in front of me, taught me very early on that it was important to talk about our recovery in a positive way so we can bust stigma in our communities and really help individuals understand that it's okay to go through struggles in life and get through them and help other people. Recently, Springfield Cares was recognized as one of the many prevention partners in the county by District Attorney Caddy Copeland and our Delaware County Council, and that was mainly for a lot of the work that we're doing in the education system that I already talked about. And here are some of the points that I just want to kind of key in on, and I thought it was funny with the presentations that were being had tonight. We talked a little bit about compassion fatigue and what that looks like, and one of the things that I did when we first started enforcement in Springfield, Delaware County was really get a better understanding from them as to what are some of the issues that you're seeing and what are some of your points that we maybe could be helpful in educating and informing you on from a perspective of substance use disorder. And the cool part about this was my prior experience was I was working for another behavioral health company a couple years ago, and we went over and we did this large training for the state police in New Jersey, and out of 75 officers that were in the room that day, 72 raised their hand and said they were sick and tired of Narcan. They didn't want anything to do with it. They were sick and tired of bringing back the same individuals over and over and not really seeing any results. And then we went through an 8-hour training with them, and by the end of the day we made a large impact on that room by not only telling our stories in a positive way, but just like Gina, talking about individuals that have been brought back from overdoses and are doing positive things in our community, and also explaining to the point that we've been given this unbelievable opportunity of bringing people back from the dead, literally, right? And we've been given this opportunity through this medical device or medical resource, right? And we don't know where they're going to end up. I know Dave's very open about his story, which is fantastic, and the fact of the matter is that we have to understand that these are individuals at the end of the day, and maybe it does take 5, 6, 7, 8 times for them to start their road to recovery, but that doesn't mean they're a bad person. They're just a sick person trying to get well, right? So we went in and we had that discussion with the police department. We went in and we opened that up for discussion, and we really just try to educate and inform them as to how we can be more helpful and how individuals, especially individuals in recovery, can kind of have that open conversation with the police department.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like Sean pointed out, I mean, I would say 75% of our duties during the day involve non-arrest situations. So that may involve, us going to a domestic call. I was looking at our numbers before I came here tonight. We responded in just the past 1 year alone, we've responded to almost 300 domestic calls for service. And for the most part, when we go to those types of calls, I would say about half of those calls involve somebody with addiction, drug related. And when we go into those homes, mom and dad are saying, I want my kid out of this house. I'm sick of it. They don't know what to do. They're not, they just don't know what to do. And that's where Springfield Cares kind of came in for us. I mean, it was an option for these parents. I mean, a lot of times there's a stigma. We all know there's a stigma. These parents didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to accept it. I want my kid out of this house. Well, we don't need to force a kid out of a house if, in a lot of situations. If we're not making an arrest, what do? I mean, you called us and we want to help you as the police department, but like I said, for the majority of the time, we're not making an arrest. We do make arrests, but when we come into the home, we have this option to, I carry Sean's cards in my pocket all the time, and I can throw it at the parents. I can give it to the either it's the daughter or the son, and it's just it's an option. It's a resource. Sometimes they call, sometimes they don't. Yeah. And sometimes it works, and sometimes we're back there the next week doing the same thing. But that's what we do. But it's become just a better option. I mean, it really has.
Right. And that's a good point you brought up. So one of the things that we did when we started Springfield Cares, once we got our mission statement in order and we started to kind of go the direction of providing education and information to our community, we had these business cards made up with my number on them and with another gentleman who sits on our committee who is a father of an individual that has 2 children that are in recovery, and he really wanted to help the parents, so we put these business cards and we asked Chief Daly and Officer Andy if we could put them in the police, the first responders' vehicles, and what we started to see was, the police department were calling us directly from the scene, myself specifically, about how we could intervene, and instead of arresting the individual, giving them the option for treatment. And we started to engage in a lot of those conversations, and within the first 6 to 9 months, we had about 30-45 people that we had the opportunity to engage with and had successfully, gotten them into an inpatient facility. So it started to take off pretty quickly with just a little bit of education and information around the subject. And I have to say, you and Chief Daly have been always from the start on the end of giving them treatment options instead of incarcerating them, and I think that's been really helpful to our mission as well.
Yeah, and one of the challenges is, as police, I stand here, I'm in a uniform, I got a gun, I got a badge. When we're dealing with these people, they're a little reluctant to open up to police and to talk about their addiction and to accept it. Mm-hmm. And we're only there for a short window. We like to call ourselves the Band-Aids. But if I can give that resource and I can leave, they can open up to Sean probably a lot better than they can to me standing there with a gun and a badge, being kind of intimidating to some people.
Yeah.
Because they're already, in crisis because we're at their house and they're screaming at their parents and there's a fight going on. And we try our best to kind of de-escalate that, but once we leave, those people are still in that situation and they need a direction to go. So.
Yeah, and it has been a success overall for the past couple of years. So point number 3 is we interact with law enforcement officers in our township to provide access to treatment instead of incarceration. We talked a little bit about that, and Chief Daly was supposed to be here, and I appreciate Officer Andy stepping up. State mission and carries it with him into the police department and all their trainings. And the last point I just want to touch on before we close out here is that with those business cards, we have been given the opportunity at Springfield Cares to really be on the other end of those calls. And I will say, as crazy as it may sound, they've been kind enough to really engage with individuals at the scene. And I've gotten calls at 3, 4, 5 a.m. and we've answered those calls, and we've had great success in this county because of the access that has been created to treatment, of getting those individuals into treatment, or at least getting them an assessment within the next 12 to 24 hours. So we have had some success, and just to give you some numbers around this, is we started Springfield Cares from scratch 3 years ago. We put together a hotline within the first 90 days. We just received our 598th call to that hotline. We've placed 164 people successfully, and we've engaged with 390 families to get them some type of treatment, whether it be one-to-one therapy or an outpatient provider in this area. So for a little organization that really runs off of nothing, we've done I think a pretty decent job, and we've just been asked to step up as I'm a member of the Delaware County Heroin Task Force, and our DA had asked me to come in and talk to some of the superintendents about our education initiative in Springfield and how we can kind of spread that across the board and really talk to other superintendents about creating more education for our youth, because I've always been a huge believer. If we look at the opioid epidemic and we compare it to big tobacco, how did that epidemic change? And it was through education and information in our school systems, and that's the only way that we're going to come out of this thing successfully, because it doesn't matter if it's heroin, if it's meth, whatever drug that comes down the line, we need to be educating our youth and allowing them to make informed decisions moving forward. And at the end of the day, that's really my lifelong passion, my lifelong mission, and that's why I got involved with Springfield Cares from the start. So I want to thank you all for allowing us to come here and present tonight, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.